All right, I'm back up to the bus and still working on the back cap project, which will be for a little bit. I'm not sure how far I got last time I was filming, but what we have now is one sheet where we have bent both the top flange, and it's a little more bent in than it needs to be. That's a little bit by design. And the bottom flange down here, right? That's going to mate to the top of the bus. We've managed to get that part done. This might be a little tall because it's got a bit more of a curve to it still than I necessarily want in the end. I don't want it to be bubbled out. I don't mind if it kind of comes down at an angle, but I don't want there to be a weird bulge there. We did connect them by Clecos when we were hanging straight down. So we have connected these two pieces together, and they make a reasonable approximation of this curve. I think that these curves are as straight as the roof is. So my next step, I think, is going to be to grab a measurement down here again, and I'm going to make another. I'm going to make the bend on this. That's going to match this part for this panel. We started this panel. After that, we'll see how far we get. I might grind in right back here. I might clean that up again and see about putting in a piece of metal that kind of goes from the top to the bottom. That's more rigid, putting a piece of metal that's more. What's the word I'm looking for? That's stiffer, so that I can actually affix the steel to that and get get more of a plane going in the back. So that's the step. That's where we're at. Like I said, this piece has been bent. It might be a tiny bit long. We're gonna have to look at that. That may be adjustable. It may not be, because the steel is gonna work hard as we work. My next step is gonna be to work on this piece, which actually belongs here, but it needs to be three quarters of an inch lower under the top sheet and above the bottom sheet. So I'm going to work on getting that. I'm also going to grab a couple measurements to try to make this the right size, and we'll go from there. So I have this measurement being about 20.5. I don't know if it's a terrible plan, but it's about 20.5. And I'm working on the theory that this curve is about right. So I can slide this in here. Where's that 20.5? Oh boy, that almost erased the curve going underneath the MDF. That's fascinating. All right. So I pulled it back tight, but it's a little bit not quite 20.5. And I've done this in the other one too. So just have to tap it in. I'm actually not going to tap this one in the full the full amount that I might. I think that I need it to be a little smaller, if nothing else, to fit the steel that's already up there, because these do nest. I'm also trying to be a little bit realistic about how exact I'm going to get this to be anyways. There's definitely going to be a little bit of a fudge factor. I have purchased 25 1/8-inch drill bits, assuming I'm going to jack a bunch of them up. But for a second there, I thought I'd lost them all, which made me a bit incredulous. again, I am drilling right through this piece to make sure it doesn't move. Because I suspect it's a fair bit of lateral tension on this steel as I hammer on it. And those are just to keep this thing flat. Next step is that I am putting a mark at 1.5 inches out. I will admit that I have absolutely no idea if 1.5 inch flange on this is aggressive or if I am underserving myself. Maybe I should be doing a 3-inch flange. Maybe I should be doing a 3/4 of an inch flange. I honestly don't know. I do know that I suspect that I'd be getting nicer flanges if I built this up to be an extra thickness of MDF. But I'm not sure it's necessary, so I'm not bothering right now. Now I like cutting this with the with those metal shears that I got at Harbor Freight. Those metal shears are only good to I think 20 gauge steel, something like that. And this steel is only 30 gauge steel, which you'd think would make this easy. Except it's hemmed, which means that right here and right here is about 3/4 of an inch where it's two layers of 30 gauge, and that means I'm not going to be able to work it. What I should actually say is that these shears aren't going to be happy with 2 layers of 30 gauge steel. I think it's 30 gauge. Should actually look that up again. It's the same stuff that came on the bus. Actually, this is literally the stuff that came on the ceiling. However, the grinder has absolutely no problem cutting through 2 layers of it. But I'm not nearly as clean with the grinder. Nor do I think that the grinder would be that fast or that tidy. So we are now at the part where I'm trying to use the right tool for the right part of a job. Here's what that place, I should say. There we go. So now, this is the side of the form that faces the front of the bus, which is good because that's the way this is facing. This flange has to face the back of the bus, which means I need to get a hammer and start tapping this down. I keep packing these hammers up as if I'm going to use them anywhere but here. I don't know what I'm thinking. the things that we noticed, in this direction, we're bending the steel so that this line is actually getting a little bit longer as it comes out to reach here, because it's moving to the outside of the curve. So I'm stretching this part of the steel right here. Get a way nicer finish that way. Steel does much better being stretched than being compressed and puckering. Well, sheet steel. It actually makes sense. When I took some classes at a forge, blacksmithing forge, which I know, given that you probably just saw me miss hammering a couple times, that's kind of funny. But when I was taking classes at a blacksmithing forge, upsetting steel, making it get smaller, is always way harder than drawing it out. In my defense, it's been a long time since I've been at the forge. I'm also not hammering very hard. I think hammering hard would give you really bad results. I'm supposed to try to send a gentle wave down the whole length every time I do this. Now I'm trying to really set this edge in a little bit. This is bowing out here. Again, the steel's fighting me. So I'm trying to set this edge pretty flat, and then I'll have to go back and work this to stretch it out some more. I'm also going to have to move this whole thing out a little bit here. Whew. Get a little more light. So I don't know if this is the right thing to have done, but one of the things that I did on the top side of this, when I got to the top, I actually put a little bit of a bend back in to try to keep this wave from interfering with the top curve. I'm not doing that on the bottom, partly because I don't think that that wave's going to develop, or doesn't tend to develop, and partly because I don't want it to lift back up off the roof of the lower section of the. I don't want the flange to lift off the lower section of the roof. Here, the roof is going over, so if this lifts back into the bus a little bit, it's going to be hidden in spray foam. You're never going to see it. As long as I can get a good seal in there. On the bottom side, if this doesn't stay relatively flat, I'll probably have to grind it off because I don't think I'll be able to hammer it back down. I mean, maybe a little bit here with a punch or something, but you know, this is going to be my visible edge, so I don't want to kind of intentionally munge it up. That said, more hammer. Whoops. You fell off the table. Alright, try that again. I'm also going to, right here, let's try to follow me. I'm going to leave this in slightly because I'd rather have it pushing into the top of the roof than lifting off. That's just a choice I'm going to make. Which means that should be about the right shape now. I'm going to pause the camera, free this thing from the form. Might hit it a couple more times. A couple places where I see that it's a little wavy. Okay, clean it up for one last bit. Take it out of the form, and then I'll try fitting it. Okay. So this is the piece that I was just working on. It came from the center of the sheet, so it's much flatter. It's probably a better representation than the first one I did. This is that top part that I was talking about. Top curve that's going on the inside and the wiggly, messy flange from the compression side. Bottom side flange, which is much cleaner. I mean, it ain't perfect, but it's a lot cleaner. And this is going in here. I also kind of inadvertently changed which way I was putting the two pieces. So on this one, the prime side is on the inside. Now, next step is figuring out if these two are going to fit together nicely and fit in here. I had pinned them in with Clecos at one point. I don't know if the holes still line up, but it's worth a shot. Maybe that's what I do first, because I think there might be a little bit of a fight here. Part of what's going on is that it's snowing outside, so I don't really feel like opening the bus. Not because I'm worried about the snow coming in, but I'm generating a tiny bit of heat, and I'd like that to stay in the bus. Okay, so I've established that after bending the sheet metal, my first test holes do not line up, which is not super surprising. So I also know that I'm supposed to have 1.5 inches of overlap. I'm going to need to get a finer tip Sharpie, but not right this second. I'm going to throw those in a little bit. So that's just about 1.5 inches in, which is just about the overlap we're expecting. Well, let's take a look at something here. So I had expressed a fear that this piece, which is the more bent piece, might cause me a little trouble. And I think it did. Because that, even though I measured them both out at being about 1.5 inches, that's way off. That's too far off. That's probably going to have to get fixed. Darn. Just for giggles, I'm going to try putting it up. Let's see how far off I am. But I actually think that curve caused me some problems.
It starts here.
Huh?
From here to there.
Well, it's not even that. I think the whole curve has to go in 1/4 inch. I think that when I put it in, there's still enough of a curve in this whole piece that didn't get clamped out flat that the whole line is off. I think there's a reasonable chance I can just hammer it in and it'll kind of counterbend, and I might build up a little bit of work hardening, but it's steel, so I'm not that worried about it. If it was aluminum and I was work hardening it that badly, I'd be concerned about it shattering later. But it's steel. Steel's relatively ductile. Yay. For now, though, I think I am going to go smash this into place and see how it feels, at least. Then I'll probably have to take this top sheet off and try to move that curve up by about 1/4 inch, I think. I should also make sure that I'm not way off on the bottom piece, or the last piece I did. I suppose what I should do first is actually bust out a tape measure. Although, having said that, the tape measure can say whatever it wants. It's the bust that counts. So this is actually saying it's about 1.25 inches, because I'm moving to the wrong side there. It's about 1.5 inches, yeah. 1.5 inches to the top of the flange, 1.25 inches to the bottom, because there's a little bit of a radius there. I think this bottom piece is going to be a lot bigger than it wants to be.
It ain't that wide.
So it wants to go that way. And I think that if we kick the foot out first, yeah. Back in, and the top of it really fits. So I'm feeling like I'm still thinking that top one wants to get smaller. I also think that we're slightly off. I think the whole thing wants to go this way a tiny bit. Uh-oh.
Got the edge in.
Got the rivets.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. As far as the bus, we're done.
Yep. Perfect fit.
Okay, doke. So we got the we've gotten our metal back in the form, and we decided to put them in together. Interestingly, putting them in together, probably because they're not exactly lined up when I joined them. Putting them together kind of shifted all of our holes, so it did not fit back in the form perfectly, which I kind of never expected that it would. To that end, though, now I have a big wide thing that is about the right shape. Maybe I should just start doing this. If I do the front cap, maybe I will. But I'm going to reform down to this edge. Down to this edge. That'll knock this in. This did line up about where we thought it would when we scribed it. I'll check the top edge, make sure that that's not too far off too. But we're just going to change the metal to match, I hope.
I like it.
Alright, let me get my crap off here and flip it over.
Yep.
Oops.
Let me get the vice grip clamp that fits over here and presses tight.
Nah, it's okay. I think we're probably there.
Yeah.
I mean, we might take the thing off and decide that we've made a terrible mistake, but I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Actually, for the one that my wife's not going to see very much. Sue's short. She won't see this scene very much. Let's line it up first.
Yeah.
Wait. That side, I think, is the right side.
That's the edge.
I believe is the edge is supposed to be right down the middle. And boy, that's starting to look like a thing.
That's a nice fit.
Yeah. Ow.
Cut yourself?
No, I peeled back my fingernail. Ow.
I'm even on this side.
Yeah. I do think we'll have to do a little bit of Yes, I broke a nail. We'll have to do a little bit of fitment there, but that's right about the curve. I can't really tell the middle yet without getting up there.
Yeah.
Boy, that ain't bad. And I'm only seeing a little bit of light through there.
Barely. I mean, it's,
A little bit there, but you know,
no, you talk about
get out. I mean,
Yeah.
there was like an eighth of an inch of
yeah.
butyl underneath this thing before.
Yeah.
So, eighth to 3/16, frankly.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that before we install it, I will probably do a strip of butyl at the very back edge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then I'll do a strip of Sikaflex at the front edge of these flanges. Right?
Yeah.
So that's a little bit more of a oomph, but the butyl will still stick in there
Yeah. Yeah.
as a backer for that. And then I'll do a whole bunch of screws down through into this sheet metal.
Are you thinking at all of turning this up a little bit?
If I do, it'll be like the last thing I do, because that's going to hide everything I do here.
Yeah.
I don't know that's necessary, to
Yeah.
say the truth.
Yeah.
I think that if we can get the seam in there nicely, and I think we can actually get that seam in there nicely,
Oh, yeah. This.
I don't think it's going to be a problem.
So I did not come up to the edge. You want me to try to?
How about up to the edge of here? What are you thinking about?
You know, we're not. We kicked out a little bit on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
But it's looking good.
Yeah.
I'm impressed.
Yep, it's not bad at all. I mean, a little bit if that's actually.
You know, big scheme of things.
Yeah, I know, but you try for the best, right?
I know. Try for the best, cock the rest.
You know. Believe it or not, this edge looked worse a while back. It just takes forever because it's a really sharp curve through here. So this sharp curve right through here, which I guess you can kind of see, really has a fairly sizable difference in circumference from 1.5 inches out here to up. The 1.5 inches is probably a bit much. But we're getting there. Turns out that this much of a curve will absolutely blow through parts of the masonite or the MDF unless you put a backer on it. So I'm using this backing anvil. And then you feel like you're just moving them, you're just moving the bump back and forth. But the bumps are getting smaller. So something must be working. I think I'm actually changing the height of this now. It's starting to kind of wave this way. And I think that I'm actually cold forging some of the steel to kind of squish in and stand up a little bit. Which is kind of crazy if you think about it. But it can be done. So I'm going to keep hammering on this. I will probably just see if this thing fits-ish before I go home. I don't know if I'll film that. But it's worth a shot. Might be back tomorrow morning. Find out. If I'm not back tomorrow morning, then, you know, throw a comment down there, ask a question, tell me I'm doing something wrong. Throw a like, throw a subscribe. If you're going to do anything, this is sort of your countdown towards the disclaimer that I'm going to put at the end and the closing title slide. That disclaimer is going to come any second now. Like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.